Well, this latest nuclear weapons test would be the fourth in less than 10 years. North Korea conducted its first underground nuclear explosion on October 6, 2006, using a plutonium-based device. It conducted a second test in 2009, less than a month after walking out of international talks on its nuclear program. Mystery surrounded Pyongyang's third nuclear test in early 2013. Unusual seismic activity and radiation were detected around the test site. And now North Korea claims to have tested a hydrogen bomb, though experts remain skeptical. Well, joining us now is Robert Kelly. He's a professor of international relations and diplomacy at Busan National University in South Korea. He's via Skype. Thank you so much for your time. First, let's talk about the latest development. It had been some time since South Korea used the propaganda messages. How do you view this, what seems to be the South's response to Pyongyang's alleged bomb test?
Sure. I think the propaganda speakers are an act by South Korea in lieu of other possible alternatives. The South would like to respond in some way to the hydrogen or claimed hydrogen bomb test the other day. It's difficult to actually take serious offensive or kinetic action against North Korea. That's obviously hugely risky. The diplomatic track with China and at the UN has generally not led to a great deal of progress. You can always talk about more sanctions and whatnot, but China has generally blocked that or allowed sanctions running into northern North Korea. So it's difficult for South Korea to find a way to respond to these things in such a way that makes it look serious, but without taking a huge risk. And so the loudspeakers are a way of doing something that kind of needles the North, but without taking a large risk. Although, like you said, it did actually lead to an exchange of fire in August. So, people are kind of concerned something will happen again.
Right, because North Korea views these propaganda messages as an act of war, though the countries are still technically at war. How might the North respond now?
Well, like I said, the last time they did actually exchange fire. I wonder if the North would actually do that again, because it would be pretty risky. Now the whole world is paying attention, right? The hydrogen bomb, or again, the sort of supposed hydrogen bomb, put everybody on notice. The South has actually flirted with sort of other ideas for escalation and things like that. The Americans are a little bit more supportive of that this time around because, the bomb test is such a big deal. So if the North actually were to lash out or actually to do something, my sense is there's a little bit more room, a little bit more political room in the South for it to respond. The North might also respond by taking hostages, for example, among tourists or the NGO workers who operate in North Korea. There are humanitarian groups that work in North Korea. It's not terribly known, but these guys are sometimes sort of taken hostage and picked up for sort of like pseudo crimes against the state and stuff like that. So North Korea might respond like that.
Now, as you've said, Robert, there is doubt, of course, whether the test North Korea conducted a couple of days ago was actually a hydrogen bomb. But nevertheless, this is the fourth nuclear test by Pyongyang, more powerful than the previous ones. And even China, North Korea's only real ally, opposed this test. So what will China do now, in your opinion? Will they finally back international sanctions that are likely to happen against North Korea?
Yeah, I have to say that I'm skeptical. The Chinese have ridden out 3 tests from the North Koreans before without really doing very much, right? As you said, as your reporter provided, in 2006, 9, and 13, there were tests, and the Chinese didn't really do anything. There was a lot of pressure on them at each of those moments to do something, and they really didn't. China does have some leverage, although they often tell us that they have less than we think. It's sort of a difficult thing to know because China and North Korea relations are really sort of shrouded, but there is a great deal of smuggling into North Korea that comes through China. A lot of the regime elite luxuries, for example, the liquor and the HTTVs and things. We think that a lot of that comes through China illicitly. Fuel oil comes into North Korea through China. North Korea is obviously dependent on that. So I do think that China has leverage, but if it had been a genuine H-bomb, I think China might have actually pushed. I think that might have actually really put them in a corner. But this is sort of what we've seen before. The seismic waves for this test looked like the ones from 2013, and they didn't do anything then, so I'm skeptical.
All right, Robert Kelly, very good to get your thoughts on this. Thanks for joining us from South Korea.
Thank you for having me.